Good morning and welcome. This Sunday is called Christ the King. It's the last Sunday in our church calendar year. Next week we will begin a new year with the feast, the first Sunday of Advent. But for today we bring you to close the journey of this whole last year. We began, 1 year ago, with beginning to welcome and prepare the way for Jesus to come. Oh, I know He already has come into our world, but to come into our hearts, to come into our lives, to come into our community, into our world, we need Christ to be here with us. We celebrated His birth at Christmas. We began to journey with Him through the Gospel of Mark. And so this last year we have followed Jesus in the Gospel written by Mark. And we went through and saw His passion, His death, His resurrection, His ascension into heaven. And then we continued to listen as He taught, to watch as He healed and helped people, to see and ourselves be formed as a follower of Christ, a disciple. Now it all comes to an end. It concludes with this celebration of Christ the King. But we have to ask the question, is Jesus our King? Is that the truth? The story, or the gospel especially, that we have today maybe surprises us. We're thinking of Christ our King as this glorious King on the clouds coming in heaven. But instead, what the church gives to us is this dialogue between Pilate and Jesus right before He dies. What's the message for us? Well, what the story tells us is there are two different ways a person is king. The first of these, represented by Pontius Pilate, or in the same time, in the same story, we know there is King Herod, who is an awful man, who represents all the negative things, the sins that people can do. He was greedy. He was egotistical. He was violent. He forced people to obey and to follow his ways. The opposite of that, of course, is Jesus, the Christ, our King. He is gentle. He is humble. He is kind. He is honest. And in fact, at the end of this story, this dialogue, he says, the reason I have come is to testify to the truth. And so we see in these opposites, Jesus, who is light, versus Herod or Pontius Pilate, who is dark. And darkness is the way of sin and destruction, while light is truth and life. Which way do we follow? We might be eager to say, oh, I'm a Christian. But the truth is what we are seeking. What is the truth? And perhaps we could look at our life at a time of conflict. Maybe a time when I don't get my way. What do? Who do I imitate? Herod or Jesus? Do I try to force people to get my way? Do I try to manipulate people to get my way? Or am I humble and allow others to have their way? Perhaps see myself as a servant instead of them serving me. Now, there's a third kind of king that we should be aware of as well. Not in this story, but in our experience, we know a king, well, really Queen Elizabeth in England. Now, the King of England, or the Queen, is a symbol, has no real power, is all about show, and is a beautiful symbol of unity for the people of England, for the United Kingdom. But she would represent for us a king who has no control in our life. That's the third kind, and it's an awful thing. That's where we say, Jesus is my king, but then I go ahead and do whatever I want. And he has no control over my life. So which is the king who runs my life? Is it someone like Herod in the world's way of violence and selfishness and greed? Or is it like a symbolic king who we lift and praise his name, but we don't really follow? Or is Christ in truth our king? Do we follow his way of love and care for all people, of service, even to the point of giving my life for the others? Three kinds of kings. Which do we follow? Today we celebrate Christ is our King. God bless you.